So far we've used the Microsoft Remote Connectivity Analyzer to test our ActiveSync configuration. And the interesting thing about that tool is it basically behaves much like a real mobile device, with a few limitations. But what we can do is jump back into our Mailboxes view, and for Alan Reed, the user that we used during the Remote Connectivity Analyzer test, we'll have another look at the mobile device details. Now earlier we looked here and it was blank. Now after running the ActiveSync test, we see this test ActiveSync connectivity device which has appeared. So that's actually the simulated device that's being used for the Remote Connectivity Analyzer tool. We can open up the details just by double clicking. It's got a device model, test ActiveSync connectivity, and a device type, test ActiveSync connectivity, and also a user agent string there as well. We can see that the access state for the device is that access has been granted, and that has been set by global permissions. So even though it's not quite the same as a real mobile device, there's no operating system or phone number or anything that we might expect to see for an iPhone or an Android device here. It is still pretty useful at simulating a mobile device. And what we can do is now see what happens if we change the global permissions for the Exchange organization, whether that ActiveSync connectivity test will be successful after that. So let's go down here to the mobile section of the Exchange Admin Center. And we need to click on this edit button over here. And here are those global settings that we talked about earlier. So after all of the allow block quarantine process has run, the last check is this organizational wide setting, which defaults to allow. So let's see what happens if we set that to quarantine. And I'm also going to add an administrator in for the quarantine notification. And some additional text here. We'll say mobile devices must be reviewed by IT prior to being allowed to connect. Please contact the help desk on extension 55111. We'll save those changes. Now let's go back to the Remote Connectivity Analyzer. We'll just run that test again. I only need to enter the password. This time it remembers all my previous settings. The test was successful. Let's jump back over to our recipients view, have a look at the mobile devices associated with Alan Reed. Now we've got that same test ActiveSync connectivity device, and now it has a status of quarantined. Now if that doesn't happen straight away, just give it a few minutes and try again. Okay, sometimes the change to the organization setting doesn't kick in straight away, so just be patient there and try again. But you can see that the test itself actually succeeded, but when we look closely, when we look a little bit closer, we see that the device has been quarantined. We'll open up the details of that device again. We can see that the access state here is shown as quarantine, and the reason being global permissions. So that's that organization-wide setting that we changed from allow to quarantine. Let's jump over to the mailbox for Alan Reed as well. We can see here's the email that was generated by the system when the device was quarantined. And it has some information there. Your mobile device is temporarily blocked until your administrator grants it access. Here's the extra text that I configured when I set that quarantine setting. And it also provides the user with information about their actual mobile device. Now I also chose to send notifications to the administrator. So if I go and have a look at the administrator's mailbox, we can see that a similar notification has come to the administrator as well. advising of that quarantine. So you could send those to your help desk or to someone who's responsible for reviewing quarantined items. So there's only so much we can do with that remote connectivity analyzer. What I'm going to do is add in an actual mobile device to my test lab environment so we can explore these features a little bit more. So these are the screens that you would see on an Apple iOS device when you're adding a new mail account. So we choose to add the Exchange account type, enter the email address and password for the account. You can put any description there you like. Because I'm using untrusted certificates, the device will prompt me with a prompt similar to this. You can see it's connected to AutoDiscover, but it's got a certificate issue. So I do get the opportunity to just hit continue and get past that one. And then when AutoDiscover directs me towards mail.exchangebootcamp.com, I have another certificate warning to deal with there as well. In the real world, if you're using proper SSL certificates that have been issued by a third-party CA, you really shouldn't run into this issue at all. So we get one last option here to choose which mailbox contents we actually want to synchronize to the device. Mail, contacts, calendars, reminders and notes. The options there, I'm just going to do mail for now. So all I had to do was hit save there. And because I've got that quarantine option set as my default organization setting, when I open the mailbox on the device, of course, the only thing I'll get is the quarantine notification email. So flicking back to Alan's mailbox, we see that second quarantine notification has come in. This time there's a little bit more information. We can see the exact device model, device ID, user agent. These user agents will be unique depending on the exact model and iOS version of the device. And that we're in that device access state of quarantined. And again, in the administrator mailbox, we get that same notification as well. So let's go back to the Exchange Admin Center and have a look at Alan's devices again. There is the iPhone that's in the quarantine state. And we can just go ahead and click allow to grant that device access to the mailbox. We also have the option to block the device. I could do a remote wipe if I wanted to. And we can also create a device access rule to match similar mobile devices. So let's say, for example, we just wanted to allow this one device for Alan. We can do that. Let's say we wanted to say that all iPhone models matching this one should be allowed in without quarantining any of the future ones. We can create that device access rule. And we can choose what to do with them: allow, block, or quarantine. Now another view of that quarantine device is available here in the mobile section. We can see by refreshing this view of quarantine devices that both of those quarantine devices now appear here. So in this view, we would see all quarantine devices regardless of which mailbox they were associated with. And again, we have those same options to allow, block, or create a similar a device access rule for similar devices.